budget work session that we will be undertaking this morning. I will ask Mr. Robert Bradley from Bread of Life Christian Church to lead us in the invocation, and if Commissioner Constantine could lead us in the pledge, please.
Let us pray. Most gracious and everlasting Father, we thank you for this day, this opportunity and privilege you've given unto us just to live and exist, Lord God, on the earth, in one of the greatest countries, Lord God, upon this earth. And Father, we thank you for today's sufficiency of grace and mercy. We thank you, Lord God, for the reason whereby we are here, to put our hearts and our minds towards the betterment and the furtherance of this county. So God, we ask your blessings upon us today, upon this board, the stewards of the citizens of this county, the stewards of the finances of this county. God, that as we come together, that our focus be on moving the county forward in a positive light. And so, God, we ask you for your divine wisdom and discretion, that it be upon them, and that the decisions that they make, Lord God, be all for our good and for your glory. And we thank you for it all. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. As we begin Memorial Day week, let us always remember for those that gave their most valuable possession, their life, so that we can be free. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And real quick,
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Mr. Bradley.
Real quick, Chairman and Mr. Bradley, before you leave, he was just promoted, a lot of you know this, to our new division, purchasing division manager, so we appreciate Mr. Bradley.
Thank you, sir. Good work. Okay, if I could just ask everyone to please take a few moments, check your phones, silence any of your electronic devices, so that everybody can hear what's happening in the proceedings this morning. We'd very much appreciate that. First item's up is going to be our consent agenda. I'm going to go to the county attorney, Ms. Kate Latour, for rules of engagement by the public on the consent agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Florida law provides that members of the public shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard on propositions before the Board of County Commissioners, except when the board is acting on emergency or ministerial matters or conducting a meeting exempt from the requirements of the Sunshine Law. Individuals shall be permitted 3 minutes each for public participation, or 6 minutes when the individual is an official representative of a formal association or group. The chairman may modify the maximum time for public participation at his sole discretion when appropriate. Public participation on quasi-judicial or other public hearing items will occur during the board's consideration of those items this afternoon. Public participation on pending procurement matters or on non-agenda items shall not be permitted at this time. Members of the public desiring to make public comment must fill out a speaker form and present the form to staff. Forms are available in the lobby. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And the clerk, which is here, Dominique, raise your hand. If you have a speaker's form, wish to speak, or written comments, just drop them right up here at the front. We'd appreciate it. We will go to the county manager. Any changes or revisions in the consent agenda, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. No changes.
Okay. Is there any commissioner desire to pull any of the items on today's consent agenda? Seeing none, I will look for public input. Any public comment?
No, sir.
Seeing none, we'll close public input and move to board action.
Chairman,
Please, Commissioner.
I move to approve item number 1 through 5 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, like sign. Seeing none, carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item up is item number 6 of our regular agenda. This is presentation and award of RFP 604918-25/PCD. This will be put on by Mr. Stephen Kuntz, Resource Management Deputy Director. Mr. Kuntz?
Go ahead. And we're going to actually have Christian Swinson, our Assistant County Manager, make the presentation this morning.
Great.
Sorry.
You guys throw me curveballs. I love it.
Yeah, sorry.
Mr. Swinson.
I can't get enough talking, so I figured I'd get up here and do some more. So I'm here with Tim Jex, as you know, Tim, our budget director. You've seen us many times on Migrant Transit, so we're just kind of giving you the latest and greatest of where we are on that. So This is our standard agenda. We'll talk about the purpose, kind of the background of the RFP update, and then also the next steps, and then a recommendation for your consideration. So starting with the purpose of this presentation is to provide the board an update on the best and final proposals that were submitted as by the vendor. You'll see a timeline in a few minutes that basically talks about, bringing in the feedback we got from the board at a previous direction, and then providing that to the vendors to then give us an updated proposal. What you won't see in this update is any discussion on fares, and that's by design. The fares, we're actually having fare structure. There was some provided by the vendor as a suggestion. We're having these all reviewed by an outside vendor for not only Title VI compliant, but also potential compliance with other federal guidelines. We don't want to run afoul of any potential grants in the future, so we're doing our due diligence to make sure that's the case. What will happen with these is when we go through all that process, and we feel very ironclad, we'll be bringing them back to you with another agendized item for discussion of fare and discounts this summer. So we just want to make sure we're fully vetted that and everything's okay. So. All right, with that, I will start talking about kind of the background and the progress. Many of these slides you'll have seen before. I apologize for the redundancy, but for the viewing public that may not have seen this presentation, I thought it was important to include some of these slides in here. So just a little background about what we're doing today with Lynx. We have 11 fixed route services through Lynx. We have two neighbor Lynx zones, and then Lynx also provides paratransit and transportation disadvantaged service. The current coverage of our Lynx network for fixed route is basically on the main state roads of the county. And that's not a carte blanche and that's it, but just as a generality, that's kind of where we have fixed route services through the county. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about paratransit. We've gotten some customer feedback from Lynx inquiring as to whether this is going to go away or not. It is not going away. We are not proposing to take this service away from Lynx or to do it ourselves. It will stay with Lynx. That's both on the paratransit side and the transportation disadvantage side. They provide both of these services. We planned to be doing it. This slide just is some information that Lynx provided to you in one of your presentations that just kind of provides an outline of the system and so forth and so on. Our service that we're talking about is meant to complement this service, to not replace it. Customers can certainly use this service if they choose. That would obviously be a good thing. I think it would be a cheaper service and perhaps a faster service for them. However, it is not designed to be a replacement. All right, this slide is another one you've seen before. It's kind of just a timeline of things that have happened. You've seen it exactly, basically the same as this, except I added the very last line, our last meeting on the 22nd, where we got feedback on both cost and service levels from the board. So this is just kind of a chronology of what's happened since last year. All right, so at that 422 meeting, here are some of the areas that we got clarification from the board. We talked about service area, we talked about Lynx route changes, we talked about fare structures and discounts, zones, service hour, wait times, et cetera, et cetera. I apologize for the length of that work session. I know we spent a lot of time together talking about it, but we provided some very good information that we were able to provide back to the vendor and really allow us to be where we are today. The next slide, just a refresher, these were the Lynx changes that we talked about. We talked about deleting all the fixed routes and the two neighbor Lynx zones with the exception of these routes here. So basically, it's the 436 route will remain as it is in entirety. The 1792 route coming out of Orange County will end at the Fern Park Superstop. The 434 route coming out of Orange County would end at McCullough Road. And then the 434 route coming out of Orange County would end at Seminole State. And then the 106 route, which is a 441 route, which just kind of cuts the corner clip of the county, just barely touches it, and we have a stop there, that would remain in its entirety. We've had 3 meetings with Lynx since there, phone calls and meetings to talk about this. They have some minor changes to this. I think the changes they're suggesting make a lot of sense. They've suggested perhaps that we run service to the UCF Superstop as opposed to the 434 McCullough Road route. They've talked about extending the Seminole State route to 436 to make a loop. So we're in those discussions now. I'm actually meeting with them again this week. This is just kind of gives you a flavor of what we're looking at. There could very well be some minor tweaks to it that we think make sense as for a regional purpose as well as just overall transportation. Now talking about the RFP and the solicitation. So as mentioned, we got the feedback. We went back to the vendor with a work clarification of all the points that were put into, that were provided by the board. We received proposals back from each of the 3 vendors. All the proposals that we received were compliant with the BCC direction that we received on 422. We had a 1-hour meeting with each vendor. From those meetings, we actually got feedback from the vendors on a couple potential changes outside of those suggestions. There were some changes they suggested at insurance levels, and then there was a couple in-kind services that were offered to us as well. I will talk in detail about both of those items here in a second, but those were things that were suggested to us as a way to further reduce some costs. And then they submitted revised pricing to us based upon those suggestions for our consideration. So let's talk about the first one, insurance level. So as you'll recall, when we put this RFP out, we said, okay, let's keep the boundaries really broad. Let's put it out and see what the marketplace bears. So as that was the case, it made it a bit difficult for insurance levels. So our risk manager at the time thought $10 million worth of umbrella coverage would be a good safety net for this. So that was what was in the RFP. The vendors provided feedback that what they typically see in the industry is $1 to $2 million worth of coverage. We went back to our new risk manager with the scopes that we were talking now and more of a defined service and had that review redone. And it was decided that yes, $10 million seems high. $5 million or $2 million was the suggested level. $5 million was the preferred level. $2 million was an acceptable level based upon cost, but not maybe a comfort level. So we asked for pricing on that. The next item to talk about were the in-kind services. The vendor suggested to us that we could provide the parking location for them to park vehicles overnight, effectively kind of a storage lot for them to provide them. And then 2 of the 3 vendors were providing a fleet that contained electric vehicles. And they suggested that if we provided the electricity, not the charging infrastructure. They would provide all the charging infrastructure and things for their cars, but if we provided the electricity, they would be able to pass on their anticipated cost for that as well. So this slide is one you saw in the last presentation. It's an outline of cost. As we talked before, we don't exactly know the savings until we provide the cost because there will be some changes in the fixed routes. It'll go up a little bit from the ones we've had. But this was a slide that was provided $9.8 million worth of cost cuts from the links routes and the services that we were suggesting. So it's just kind of a refresher on that. So now we're getting to the main topic is the proposals we received from the 3 vendors. So we have a chart here that shows them all. As you can see, we had proposals range from $5.4 million to $9.2 million. The big difference you'll notice is vehicles, and I'll talk in length and show some what I'll call standardized numbers with that here in a minute. But basically the difference in the vehicles count where one vendor said, hey, or 2 vendors said, let's start at 35 vehicles, and we don't know what the initial need is going to be for that, but we think 35 out of the gate is a good starting point. One vendor suggested we review that at 90 days and then out accordingly. The other vendor said, hey, you're going to need 55 vehicles for the service as it stands, a normalized service. This is what we think you'll need every day. They want to provide those vehicles up top. I asked that question to all 3 vendors. How many vehicles do you think we'll ultimately need when this service is fully ramped up? We pretty much had a unanimous opinion, or we did have a unanimous opinion, that 55 vehicles is the number. So the question is, from day 1 of the service, how many vehicles do we need to, day whatever years? I mean, it could take 2 years potentially to get to 55. It could take 3 years. It could take 2 months. We don't know that. There needs to be some fluidity based upon usage and people getting aware to it. As we mentioned in the last board presentation, there's some areas that we'll be servicing that aren't links routes now. They're maybe not feasible to walk that far to a links route, that people will have coverage, and as a result of that, there'll be usage we don't know. So that's really the difference in those numbers. You can see if we look at the insurance change to the $5 million, and I'm only highlighting the $5 million here because there's about $160,000 worth of difference between the $5 million and the $2 million. After speaking with our risk manager, the extra coverage it was felt was worth that cost. So we're only showing the $5 million, and that is our recommended level. As you can see, the savings went from $400,000 to $15,000. I'm not really sure what the difference is on how their insurance works there, but it was a substantial change by two of them. The parking, that's about a $60,000 savings annually if we provide the parking. If you look at it, the numbers look fairly standardized to me in that if you look at the vehicles that are close to double, it's about double the savings. So it's obviously a price per vehicle, but you get kind of an idea about that. And then two of the vendors were suggesting an electric fleet of some sort. I have that labeled there as a primary type of vehicle, and the reason I say that is because at least one of the vendors is running hybrid vehicles for their wheelchair access vehicles, not electric vehicles. So the electricity savings, as you can see, is a $55,000 to $100,000. I question whether we should have used the word savings. I put it on there because that's what it is. It's really just a transference of cost. You'll see in our recommendation on the latter slide, we're not recommending this. It's kind of an unknown, and it isn't truly a savings. It's just a transference of cost. So you'll see as you come down, so the prices went from $4.8 million to $9.1 million, as you see from the chart. It's important to point out the last row. There is a setup cost to do this. There's obviously getting all the work before the service kicks up. There's, it was $100,000 by two of the vendors, and then almost $650,000 by another one. So this was our recommended level that we see here. It shows the $5 million savings, and it shows the parking savings, and as you can see, it adjusts the cost ever so slightly. We're at $4.9 million, and obviously the 9.2 still stays there. So, all right, one thing I wanted to talk about was standardizing this pricing to what the service should ultimately look at based upon what everyone's guess is what it will be, the 55 vehicles. So this is what we did. We took the pricing, we adjusted it, we added the vehicles. There are some tiered pricing differences from the more vehicles you add. Some of the vendors, their pricing gets cheaper by the number of vehicles, so we normalize that as part of this effort. But as you see here, it's basically $7.8 million to $9.1 million. I think what's especially important, and albeit it's not highlighted in this slide, is the last row. If you look at the price escalation on there, you'll see two of the vendors are locking in for 2 years with no price increase. One vendor is locking in for one year with no price increase, but all three of them had a 3% annual increase after the lock-in period. And that's important, and the reason it's important is I want to bring your attention to this next slide. This was a slide that you saw from Lynx. This was provided as part of their budget presentation last year. And what's especially important about it for this conversation is this is the full partner contributions of the whole system, so it's not just Seminole County, but what makes it applicable just to Seminole County, as it is the same level of applicableness to each one of the partners, is the pink row. And if you look at what the annual escalation is on each one of these, you'll see it there. It's 15.5, reducing down to 5.2. So I just keep that in mind as we go to the next slide. My good friend, Mr. Jex, and we do so much of this together with, was gracious enough to provide this slide. He created this slide. What I want to bring your attention to is this just focus on the $9.8 million worth of cuts. It's not what our cost is for links that we pay now. This is just looking at the costs we're talking about to standardize it with what the cost of this replacement service would be. So as you look at the top category, you see links, you see the first year it starts at 9.8, and then it ends out at about $20 million. As you go through each of those three vendors and you add the escalators that are by the proposals, and obviously Lynx's estimator, which is by their own slide, as you can see, by the time you get to 2035, we're at about 50% of the cost. Instead of $20 million for this service, we're at approximately $10 million, depending on which service. I think this is a very important slide. So now let's talk about the next steps. The folks in the county attorney's office, more specifically Burjesh, has been doing a lot of work the last 2 weeks to try to get a contract pulled together. I believe he emailed you a copy of where he is now, so you had a copy. The contract is not quite finalized. We're very close. It's been going out to an outside vendor to make sure we're in full compliance with things from a federal perspective. It's also been conversations back and forth with the selected vendor, and we're very close. There's just some minor changes to be there, but they'll be adjusted. And then we would like to get it to a point of execution through the county manager's office to execute the contract with the vendor, and then begin the long process of service delivery. We've talked to the vendor. We're still shooting for an October delivery, service delivery starting, and then also, obviously, we'd look at the phase out from Lynx with the overlap at the end of the year. So our recommendation from staff, based on the charts and everything that you saw before, is here on the screen. We're recommending to award to Be Free LLC, which does business as Freebie, and authorize the county manager to authorize the county manager to execute the agreement and adjust the service level. Sorry, I was trying to blend it all together. Going forward, based upon user demand, as we talked about. So with that, I would like to turn it back to you, and then see if there's any questions or anything.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson. Any inquiries by the board at this time? We'll start with Commissioner Herr and work right on across to Commissioner Lockhart.
First of all, I appreciate all of the work that you all put into this to get this across this finish line. We're not quite there yet. Now it's on us, but it's been considerable, and it's been appreciated. Every single time you came back to us, the facts were there. It was laid out so clearly. It was this, I think, is an easy decision. I do want to share some of the things that I shared during my briefing with the board. With regard to the fairs, when they come back, I did ask that we talk about the highest fare available and still be eligible for funding through grants. So we have to know what the highest number is. Otherwise, we're not going to manage supply and demand, and this becomes the next links. And I do worry about that. The savings that we realize through this through the future only works if we are disciplined about how we manage this. We don't want to become Lynx Junior. I just want to reiterate, because we are hearing about this, paratransit, this is in addition to the current service, so it may be available and something that's worthy, but your current service is not going away. I do want to give a shout out to Lynx. I appreciate them giving feedback on the routes that we've chosen. That seems to be a step in the right direction in terms of the cooperation on this. I would like to know if they've given us a clear, firm position with regard to the cost to exit.
Did you want to take that? They have not. We anticipate sending a letter after this board meeting to give them the official where we are. We do have a meeting Thursday where they're going to talk about budget. They are presenting at the current trajectory. They were projecting a budget as it is a status quo, but I believe they have the ability to pivot based upon the conversations we've been having with them. So we're anticipating perhaps them getting the letter and then pivoting, and then at that point we'll have an idea what the reductions will be.
So I realize the cost to exit is one time, but it needs to be taken into consideration as we're just trying to figure out where we're starting with all of this. With regard to the in-kind, I did share that my position was, I think unless we just have a piece of land that we want to share for a place to park, I don't want to be in this business. And this is, you all, the vendor needs to be doing all of this. The value of that is not worth the risk from my perspective. $5 million is the right number. It can't be lower than that as a starting point. From my perspective, I think we have to start small and then scale. Starting large would be a mistake. I also would like to see in the contract, I think this is how the contract is written, but this is not what was said on the record, and the annual increases are up to 3%, not a guaranteed 3%, because inflation may be going in a different direction.
Yes, we'll make sure it's noted in that regard.
And then I cannot stress enough two things. Number one, thank you, and now the work is ours to be disciplined about how we roll this out. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. My input, a couple things. One is contract related, sort of in the same vein as Commissioner Herr. Tying to 3%, maybe we should be better looking at a CPI and what that looks like before we make those moves. The other contractual change I think should be added because we have come to find out that we don't always get the notice on this dais, is part of the notification process should go to the chairman of the county commission, in addition to the county manager, to ensure that the elected get that notice when those changes are coming forward under the contractual relationship. In addition, I think and agree this is a great first step. I think that I'll voice it again, because there has been a lot of chatter in the community that I've been out and been talking to on this regard. This is not a replacement for Uber. That's not the intention that we're undertaking. But there is chatter in the community that they believe this is an Uber service that everybody could take at a discounted rate as compared to using Uber. It was never the intention to compete against the private sector. That's not our space. That's not our intent. That's not where we should be. And obviously, with the vehicle count, we could never get there at this point, and I don't think even if you went with 55, you couldn't get there. But just so the public knows, this is not a government-funded Uber replacement for your Uber and your Lyft rides. This is to connect the links, absentee, that we're going to do away with for the people in most need. And of course, anybody can ride it, but it's going to help connect to the Sunrail and other areas which will be beneficial to the community overall. So moving forward, I think we have to understand, and there's going to be some hiccups, there's going to be some speed bumps as this unfolds and as it gets acclimated and our community becomes engaged. But I haven't seen anything, and I know we spoke about it during my briefing, the marketing and communication side of the transition over to our customers. From the standpoint, I know in my briefing, what I suggested was, whether it's valid or not, is that the existing bus stops for links, we place a sign or some kind of signage to help inform the riders what is happening. That could be a QR code that they could scan, a phone number that they can call for information, because that's going to be key on how this ultimately unfolds, how they understand it unfolds, and not necessarily what they see on the news, and not necessarily what they're maybe told by someone else. I think this is going to be a great model. I've heard chatter from some of our sister counties who are waiting with bated breath to see how this unfolds, and are maybe happy that one of us are venturing out to look at an alternative to what we're doing with links and the costs associated with it. But I think we will ultimately get to the 55, and it may be more than that as things unfold. But I would say we all have to have an understanding there's going to be some speed bumps. We're going to get some complaints. There's going to be some concerns. And how we handle that with our vendor is going to be paramount on how we're able to shift, correct those issues, fill those voids. So I just want everybody to know we should all be patient as this unfolds, if this is the route we're going to go. And then finally, I have no interest whatsoever in being in the management of this operation. It's not our space. If we can be helpful with, accommodating some requests, access, those kinds of things, great. I think we should be playing more of an oversight under the contractual agreement. But I have no interest in being in this business or managing it from that standpoint. We'd be foolish to try to do that. And I think we just get in the way of productivity of our vendor, quite frankly. That's pretty much my oversight. I would like us to see, as this unfolds, and I think we've touched on it a little bit, that at some time down the road, as this all starts to come to be, is we look very closely at paratransit and the options we may have there for additional cost savings. But this will be a good first step. So thank you all very much. I know you all have been living and breathing and eating this for a few months, so thank you all very much. Commissioner Delary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank staff for all their hard work. I know there's a lot of time and effort that's gone into this. We've all talked about links for a number of years and about how you see buses riding up and down the road where there's very few people, if any, that are in the bus. And you do get complaints from people that it doesn't go where it needs to go. It's hard to get, standing out in the rain where there's no shelter. There's a lot of things that we could criticize, but moving forward, I really believe this is the right way to go. In looking at this, and again, I asked for all the information that I could get, and I was able to get that on late Thursday afternoon, so thank you. I spent the weekend reading everything I could. I have a lot more questions. I'll iterate some of the things that my other commissioners said. We shouldn't be in competition with Uber, even though I think this could potentially be that. Because even though we're not going to discuss rides and fares, in looking at some of the examples, it's cheaper than Uber. And I want to make sure that we're not in that space, but still serving the underserved people that need it to get across town. There are some people that can't afford what Uber needs and needs to pay the $2 fee. And I've not yet seen that information, but still need to see that. I did ask for additional information on the data and analysis about cutting back with the routes that we spoke about at the last meeting. Still waiting for that information. I spent the weekend reading through this whole thing, and I'd love to have an additional work session with the company what we're going to choose. Looking at everything, I believe that Freebie is the one to go with. I think that since this is such a big issue and it's such a big turning point in transit in this region, that we should have a presentation with the company to answer some of the questions that are not being addressed at the dais. We did talk about storing the vehicles. I agree that we should not be allowing them to store on our property. Same thing with electric. I think it should be turnkey. I think we should be talking about vehicles, what type of vehicles we're talking about, because at the last meeting, we had Mr. O'Hanlon talk about Teslas and about autonomous vehicles, about when that would be happening, and potentially happen within the next year. The vehicles that are being discussed in the presentations that I was able to read over the weekend says that they could go to Teslas, but that's not what they're recommending at first. So I want to make sure we're very clear with that when they are allowed to use autonomous vehicles, what happens to the Volkswagens or the Toyotas that we now have? And I'd like to have that addressed. There's a lot more questions, since this is such a big issue, that I really believe that we should have a work session with the company that we're chosen so that we can flush all these things out, so that we know that however we move forward, that we're making the right decisions. The other question I have is with the savings that we've been talking about in the presentations that I read over the weekend, these companies are talking about reinvesting that into the system. It's clear that it says that. So we're not really saving any money. So if we think we're saving money, I don't see that. I see the look on your face, but I'm reading in these presentations that you gave me on Thursday that it talks about reinvesting that money into the system. And so I like to have that flushed out, because there's two reasons for us doing this. Better serviceability for the residents of this county and for cutting on the cost. Or are we trying to do both? You're not going to do both. And I would like to understand the dollar figures, because I don't see this potentially savings as everything that you're saying. Because of what Link's still doing the paratransit, it's about somewhere around $5 million. We haven't yet gotten the fee yet, what Link's is going to be charging us for the remaining system. That's going to be at least several more $1 million. And about $7 million that we see here, or $5 million that we see here, we're pretty close to where Link's is today. So I'd like to understand those numbers. Those are my comments.
Commissioner Constantine.
Thank you. Some of the questions I'll know the answers to, but I want them for the record. Some of the questions I truly want some answers to, but in all cases, for the record, we are still part of the Links regional transportation system, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so anybody that says that we're leaving Links, we are not. We have worked with them on this. In fact, from what I hear, they are looking at a similar model, potentially, as someone, I think it was Jay mentioned, Commissioner Zimbauer mentioned, that they are also, that other counties are looking at this, but they are looking at something potentially similar to this. We are still keeping certain routes going into Orange County and beyond, correct?
That is correct.
On the request for the lock-in prices and the recommendation of freebie, you mentioned in one of the pages that there were two, and I think some others commented on this, but there were two things that they said, in addition to the insurance, which we pretty much came up with a decision on, that would affect the prices. Does this price that they're asking reflect that we are doing those two or not?
So that they provided pricing in all directions for us to pick
Okay.
which savings we want. So we have the ability, and it sounds like from, I mean, I can obviously count, so I've heard 3 comments that we're not interested in parking or electricity, and I've heard 3 comments that we're interested in the insurance rate. So as a result of that and this approval, the contract would reflect the costs that were shown without those,
Okay,
without those adders.
So the $7,766,000 that is on, there's no page number, but the future cost lock-in pricing range, and by the way, it would be really nice if we had page numbers, but on the future cost lock-in pricing ranges, the $7,766,000 and from freebie, that is without electricity and without.
That number actually takes our recommendation, adds it, so what that includes is the $5 million insurance and the parking. So if the parking's out, you would add $63,000 to that price.
Okay, so $63,000 for parking. Do we have any idea what the savings would be, or, what the electricity would be?
So we didn't take that because it's
Okay.
truly just a pass-through cost, so it's not shown in this number, and that was not a recommendation that we were comfortable taking.
All right, so I didn't hear 3, but if we could find, I don't want to be part of their operation, but if there is a place that is available for parking, I don't have a problem with that if that's going to be savings for us. But of course, that would be something that we would have to scrub down and make sure that it's not going to be of any liability, or, I'm sure there will be some liability, but that it would be worth it. I heard that you mentioned at one time another Seminole State potentially, which would then, give them some ability to go back and save some money with their transit, with their students. I'm just saying, I'm not opposed to that, okay, if that is something to look at. Just so we know, the links charge is $2 one way today for everyone.
For fixed route, yes,
For
sir.
fixed route, $4.50 for an all-day fare. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. We are not trying to compete with Uber. I think when asked the question from my home, which is the furthest south here to the Chambers, if I was going to take it, as a regular citizen, anyone take it from out, it would be about $13. Is that correct from what you, I know we're not talking price, but I think.
But we're talking price.
But we're talking price, because it's the secret sauce. It is. And I'm just saying that, but that's something that would be potentially, that's what we're,
So if I may, all the vendors provided some suggested fares. These are the fares I'm vetting. The selected vendor provided an example which showed crossing zones and things like that. And if the board chose those fares and the person, and those fares were compliant with federal regulations and all that, and those were passed back to the board and they were accepted at those levels, then yes, sir, the fare in that case would be crossing multiple zones and would be that. There's several steps to get to that, to make sure, I don't think we don't want to run afoul of any potential federal grants that could potentially help with this system. So that's the reason we want to vet those fully.
The last comment that I want to make then on fares, because I understand where you're coming from, is that, and I'm going to use a person, someone like, Joanne, that everybody at every meeting of Lynx, every meeting at MPO, she is there asking for 24/7, 365. The point is that she, I want to make sure that folks that have no other choice but Lynx are going to be put in the same situation as Lynx is today financially. That was just the only comment I wanted to make on that. When it comes to hours of operation, we have not changed that. It's from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day, Monday through Saturday.
It's, I'm going a little bit from memory here. So it's 5 to 9 Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 Saturday, 6 to 8 Sunday, and the pickup time. And I'm sorry, I'm going back in my memory bank from the last work session. I believe that's accurate. I think your question, perhaps maybe based upon our briefing, has to do with its comparative level compared to what the Lynx service times are now. The routes that Lynx provides system-wide operate at a variety of different times. We have some routes that start at 4 in the morning here in the county and finish up after 1 o'clock in the morning. Many of the routes in the county, and more specifically the ones that we're looking at replacing this service, run a very commensurate time to what we're proposing at the 5 to 9 on the weekdays. There may be some minor adjustments starting 5 minutes later or 20 minutes later and lasting 20 minutes later or earlier or vice versa. But for the most part, when we looked at those service hours and we talked about those, we tried to keep the service hours the same as what's applicable now on those days for the routes we're replacing.
So you are running Sundays and holidays and...
Yes, what we talked about at the last board meeting was we talked about a 30-minute pickup from Monday through Saturday and an hour pickup on Sunday. The service times that were also presented and accepted were the ones that I just mentioned, and they very much mirror the service times. They're not exact. They very much mirror, though, the service times of the route reductions, which were also considered at that meeting.
So getting back to then the cost, in looking at the freebie of the lock-in price that we are looking at for 26, and I'll use 26, the 7.7 million does not include paratransit.
So this slide, can you change the slide, Tim, to the comparative slide? So this is a slide that focuses just on it's a comparative between the cuts and the replacement service. This is not an all-in on what we're paying Lynx, so therefore it does not include the routes that are still remaining. It does not include the paratransit service. This slide is an attempt to normalize the service that would be going away from Lynx and to be replaced with, in my opinion, a more robust and a more available microtransit system. So it's attempted to normalize that.
Christian, I understand that.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to get at, the 5 million paratransit that you have estimated, you and Tim, is the same 5 million we would be paying anyway.
So let me add to that. Am I okay to go? Okay, fair enough. Thank you. I didn't want to interrupt you. Sorry.
I'm trying to add, I'm trying to get on the record.
So the 5 million, we pay approximately 5.5 million to be a little closer. That service, we believe, will likely reduce, but we don't know by how much. We're not looking to replace the service, but if you can go back to the paratransit slide, I want to point just a couple things out on the paratransit slide. So this is the slide that was provided by Lynx. They will still be providing the service. Paratransit currently, if you qualify for this, you can go to doctor's appointments across counties and things like that. We're not suggesting to replace that. But if you look at the last bullet point on this slide, and I think this is important, is that from Lynx's own data, they show 31% of paratransit riders in Seminole County begin and end in a neighbor link zone. So just to give some more information on that, we only have 2 neighbor link zones in Seminole County, one in Sanford and one in Oviedo. So they begin and end in these relatively small zones. Albeit we're not targeting that, we're not replacing it, I think our fare structure can help when we get there and have the discussion on that, but even from a convenient structure, even if it's the same thing, I think based on the service that potentially you're looking to move forward with, the 31% of the people using this would be better served potentially, be more convenient for them to take this service in lieu of that. I can't guarantee those prices. I can't guarantee any, not prices, I can't guarantee those savings. This comes down to individual choice. If someone is a dedicated Access Links customer and they want no changes, no matter how good anything else is, we pick them up on a gold chariot or something, they're not interested, then so be it, that would be their user choice. But from an objective standpoint to say, okay, it's faster, and I think we would be cheaper in that regard. That would be my recommendation due to the cost of this to provide the service. I think it would make sense for a lot of those customers to look at our alternative service model if you approve it, but I can't guarantee any of those costs.
But to answer your question, yes, as that Links will be doing the paratransit. Yes, but have options to go toward with us if they wanted.
And
I said I was verbose.
in the lock-in price range, right now we don't know what Lynx is going to come back and say the rest of the costs are happening. So the cost of the fixed routes we're keeping.
That's correct.
So in this case, would be if we kept the service as it is today.
Yes, sir, that is correct, because that's all we can tell you is what we know the cost of them are today, and that's why we're trying to show the data. I don't know, I don't have any idea what they're going to revise, so this was the only data I could provide you.
And in this situation, and I'm asking this to Tim as well as you, Christian, but Tim would be shorter.
I'll defer to you.
Is there any fundings, any possible, that we missed? Both, there could be costs that we're not aware of right now. Anything, I know that's hard to estimate, but could there be anything that we have missed in this?
Any costs on the microtransit side?
Yes.
Nothing that we're aware of now. I think we feel confident in the lock-in pricing that the contractor is providing, and we feel confident that we can control those costs more effectively through microtransit than the current system.
Okay. Then, so this is a potential very valuable alternative to the last mile, first mile, that we've always argued is the biggest opportunity when it comes to Sunrail. I'm excited about the innovation of this. I believe that Commissioner Delory is correct that it would be nice once we have the company, and that we have a, workshop with them so we could flush out questions that we might have with them. Another concern that I have, and it's always have, is just like when certain cable vendors came through that we had no control over this year and started tearing up people's lawns, is that we have someone that is assigned that people could go to in these companies, because I'm afraid that this 30-minute, when it starts not happening, I know every one of us is going to get a lot of phone calls in our offices and things of that nature, and so that's something. But the marketing is also, as Commissioner Zimbauer pointed out, is extremely important as far as, who should use it, how it should be used, why we're doing this, all of that. And then obviously the last key is the fares, which I know we're not talking about, but I brought it up. I'm not sorry about that, but I think that is the secret sauce that will make or break this thing, and that the people that have no other alternative currently than Lynx are not going to be put in a financial situation that they cannot handle. So with that,
I just want to make sure, for clarity, you're recommending to memorialize the fare discussion an additional workshop as we work through that, but you're working with a legal entity to ensure that the fare structures are proper to not impact any federal grants or other grant money that could possibly come to us. Correct?
That is completely accurate.
After we move on beyond what we decide today.
That is completely accurate.
As
yes.
well as, the reality is, whether it's Lynx or one of these entities, we're subsidizing the fares anyway. We should understand that. And it falls on us on how we're going to adjust that moving forward with that vendor that's ultimately picked.
And Mr.
Just wanna
Chairman,
make sure.
I know I've said this, but I think others have said this before, and we want to ensure that this great, I think, innovative project does not cost us any more than what it's costing Lynx today.
Sure.
And that is a guideline, I think, that we've made.
Commissioner Lockhart.
A lot of layers and a lot of questions remain that I'm excited to get the answers for, and I think we will. I think all of the questions that are being asked are completely appropriate. I'm at a little bit of an advantage in this conversation because I've been steeped in it with our team for many months, and I do want to thank you so much. This has been, these fellows have an actual job in this organization separate and apart from all of this, and you've taken on a tremendous amount of personal interest, I think, in this project as we've moved forward, and I think they really see, we all see, the tremendous advantage that this is going to bring to the community who is using the services of Lynx now, and others who don't have the benefit of using Lynx will now be able to utilize this service. Thinking about someone like Joanne, who is actually one of my constituents, she lives just about a mile away from me. Joanne has my cell phone number, and we're friends on Facebook, and I hear the message loud and clear, very personally, regularly. And so I am continually reminded in these conversations that folks with special needs and folks who are transportation disadvantaged, that is what this service is first supposed to be addressing, their needs. The fact that we will be able to expand and serve more needs for less money is just an opportunity we cannot pass up. A couple of things that I want to address. We are talking about one side of the ledger. We have not even touched on the other side of the ledger, which are partnerships, grants, advertising. I think when we do have the opportunity to have the work session with the selected vendor, you will be mind blown by the creative, out-of-the-box way that this company in particular has devised to bring in the private sector. This is going to be potentially an economic driver. So we're going, the mind shift, the paradigm shift here is that we are going from a money and time suck to an actual beneficial service that is going to be generating revenue and helping to create business in our community. So it's a complete paradigm shift in talking about transportation. As far as times and people calling because it's been more than 30 minutes, I'm sure, people will find things to complain about, but they're not going to be standing out for an hour at a bus stop in 100-degree weather waiting for a bus that may be late. And so to be able to sit in their home or at their place of work and in the air conditioning and wait for a ride that they called, yes, call me. I'd love to chat with you about that. The communications plan, I agree, is absolutely critical. I think staff is already working on that, and maybe when we're done, Mr. Gray, you can give us an update on where we are with that. Absent accurate information, that vacuum will be filled with misinformation. So I would hope that we would get out ASAP like yesterday with talking about what the plans are and what next steps are. There are a lot of I'm getting some feedback that is inaccurate, and so we're doing the best that we can to follow up individually as people reach out. Several times the comment was made about leaving Lynx and what the payout is going to be, and we don't have that number from them yet. I would ask us to not just look at this as a mathematical situation, but a legal situation. We have a document, we have an agreement with Lynx that says that what our rates are supposed to be, that's based on fixed route miles. So yes, that is just math, but some of the there have been intimations that those numbers may somehow change, and we don't know yet what those numbers are going to be. We have a contract that says what those numbers should be. So if there is significant movement in that number, that's, I think, when we get our legal team involved. And I'd be happy to have anybody address that. I don't know if the county attorney or county manager want to address that situation. I'm excited about this. I think this is truly, while other communities have done this, we are not the first. We are the first in this region. And I think it's great to acknowledge that there will be bumps along the way. We are going to ask for a lot of grace from our community as we figure this out and get it right, because we're not going to get it right out of the gate. We cannot predict. You know, Commissioner Constantine asks, is there anything that we haven't found that you have identified? Well, if you've identified it, we haven't not found it. Right? So if we had that crystal ball, if we knew what we didn't know yet, we would know it. And so we're hopeful that the community will work with us. This is something that we're wanting to do as a benefit, and I think it will be. So, Mr. Chairman, if you are open to a motion, I would be happy to make one.
I'm going to go to the public in just a minute, but I'll be happy to come back to you for that. Is there any other commissioner questions, comments that need to be happening?
Go ahead, Bob.
Commissioner Herr, then Commissioner Delory.
So just a couple of points. I, too, was a little bit unnerved by the commentary around this, that there isn't savings and there is savings. There is a clear savings because we compared the fixed routes that we're going to stop using to what this will do to replace it. And there is a very clear savings, not only right out of the gate full-blown, which we're not going right out of the gate full-blown, but the trajectory over time is also more meaningful. I do think that the Lynx contract is going to be tested, and I do believe that we need to make sure that they're held to that standard. We are not going to be a place that becomes the repository for them figuring out how to make up for ARPA funding. I will say on their defense that the trajectory at the 15% was because they're making up for ARPA funding. They've been spending that money down. So that's not a fair representation, but the rest of it is a fair representation, and the escalation over time is more than we can tolerate. And so I do think that that's the next thing. If you asked what's the unknown that we know we don't know, it's we really need them to commit at this point. And we've been very open and talked about this from the very beginning with them in this room, so there should be no surprises. So this should be readily available at this point from my perspective. There is, for reference in the document, an entire section that's applicable to managing fares for the most vulnerable and making sure that they get tracked, et cetera. So I have no concern that we'll be able to address the issues for folks that need it most. I do think from a planning perspective, we are not going to take complaints from the folks that stand at bus stops right now. We are going to take complaints from the folks that think this is a replacement to Uber. That has to be upfront, that it is not, and we are not here to serve them. We are here to serve people that need transportation, and if you can afford to go elsewhere for a higher service level, then that is it is a free market. That's the beauty, God bless America. So we are not going to try to change the trajectory of this to meet those needs. And that's going to mean that we have to stand up when those calls come into our office to say, this is a replacement to Lynx. Were you a user of Lynx before? Is this better than Lynx? Not is it better than Uber or a taxi cab. I can tell you it's going to be better than a taxi cab. So we don't have that. And then the last piece that I neglected to say this when I started, is that Commissioner Lockhart, I applaud you for challenging the status quo. Because had you not transitioned onto that board, we would not have challenged the status quo. I had eyebrows raised for a year, but literally felt powerless to change anything, and you saw a different way forward, and here we are. So thank you for that.
Commissioner Glory.
Thank you. As Commissioner Lockhart stated, we do have a contract with Lynx. I would hope that staff would do a simultaneous calculation of what those routes would cost and what the savings would be. We could do that so that we can compare the two costs. Tim, how much do we pay Lynx right now?
The Seminole County funding obligation is $17 million.
Okay.
We pay Lynx $14 million, and that's reflective of what Commissioner Herr mentioned, that they have county funds that they're holding that they use to subsidize our rate. We pay them $14 million.
Yeah, my reason why I was saying, because if you do paratransit plus what we're looking at, the 55 vehicles, you add those two numbers together, we're right around 13 million right now. We don't know what Lynx is going to charge us or what the discount that we would calculate would be. So I want to make sure that we stay below whatever those numbers are that we need to stay, either, what are those two numbers again?
Our obligation is $17 million. That's what we're
17
paying
million.
to Lynx.
Because right now, if you add the two numbers together, paratransit and freebie, we're at 13. So I'm hoping that we actually save some money with this. But my main concern is how do we make sure that we're actually saving money as we move forward? And I want to make sure that all those checks and balances are in place in this contract. So, and I would also like to see a work session with freebie so we can flush some of the stuff out so we can get a better understanding of it as well as the public. That's the end of my comment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner, and Mr. County Manager.
Yep, just a couple of comments. One, thank you, Commissioner Lockhart, for bringing this up. One thing that this board asked myself to do, and Christian Swinson and myself did it early on, is that we went and visited our partners. We visited all three hospital systems, Orlando Health, Advent, HCA. We visited the college, Seminole State College. We visited the school board in all 7 cities. We got, and the airport, by the way, with the Orlando Sanford Airport, we got total enthusiasm from all of them. In fact, the private sector partners are willing to sit down and talk to us. He said it's a little too early because we don't know where we're going. I don't know where the board is going. But I appreciate you bringing that up because we're looking, and what we wanted to bring to you is just the facts, what the cost is and what our savings is. But we do not know what the additional cost savings to us to be and the partners that we're getting. And I will tell you that we had great conversations with our partners. So that is to be determined as well. Regarding the communication plan, our team, Chris Patton, our communication director's team, is ready. Once we choose a vendor to move forward with, we're ready to start working with them on the communication plan. I'll be working with the board as well. So that's why we want, if we want to do this, we want to do it now so we can have enough time to start educating the public about what our new process is. And then lastly, again, you're right, Commissioner Lockhart pushed the bar up to us. We accepted that challenge, but those two individuals sitting at that table, blood, sweat, and tears. I got briefed weekly on this, and I was like, oh, wow, this, and it just started snowballing. And I would be remiss if I did not thank Lynx. Their planning team is amazing. In fact, I'll just mention his name, James Boyle, who's the director of their planning team, has experience with this and actually was very helpful with us determining on how we move forward. So I did speak with Ms. Hawkins last week. In fact, the chairman and I did. We were at an Orange County visioning session. She was there. I told her once the decision was made by the board, we would forward a letter to them, an official letter, and at that point, then the next step of the process would be what is our new Lynx budget.
Thank you. So there's no question in my mind, Lynx is going to be working alongside of us. There are benefits of what we're doing to Lynx in the long run. I think everyone in the region, I think, recognizes that with maybe the exception of immediate downtown, densely populated areas such as the city of Orlando and portions of Orange County, the model is broken for mass transportation when it comes to buses. And this is going to give the opportunity to come to a modern day solution that is not only a better service for the users, but is also going to be a much cheaper and viable solution overall from time management, whether you're making a doctor's appointment or some other appointment you have to be at. But I think that regionally, our partners are going to work with us in this space, regardless of the contract that's there. I would say the biggest disconnect that I continue to observe, where I would argue there is some disconnect, is the actual ridership numbers for our county. And I've asked for that since the day I arrived here in 2018 and still can't get a straight answer. And I think this will help answer that. The proof will be in the shift and what ultimately happens. But I have no belief that somehow Lynx is not going to be fair with us, and we will work through that with our regional partners. We work on many other things as regional partners as well, so it's a win-win, I think, at the end of the day for everybody. Yes, is there some concern? It's the unknown. A lot of people are afraid of the unknown. What's going to happen when Seminole pulls away in that funding? What's going to happen to the riders when we have some shift in what they're accustomed to? And the bottom line is, as anything changes, there's going to be some impacts, and we have to be wise enough to understand that and respond to those in the most efficient, corrective way, and then it'll all be okay. 6 months from now, this won't even be a topic. But the further work sessions on funding or the fair, I think, is a fair thing. But again, I have no interest whatsoever, make sure I'm clear, of running the microtransit or telling the vendor how to run the microtransit. I think it's pretty well outlined in the contract what our expectations are. They, as a business model, should be able to respond to those aspects that are in the contract, or they can't. It's that simple. But I also am very thankful when I ask that there is a bond mechanism that has been put into this, which protects us if something were to really go afoul. So with that said, if there's no other comments from the board, I'm going to go to public comment and come back to the board for action. Anyone here from the public to speak on this matter?
No, sir.
We will close public input and go to board action. Commissioner Lockhart, you were prepared to make a motion.
I am. Thank you very much. Commissioners, I'd like to make a motion to award RFP 604918-25/PCD, term contract for microtransit services to the top-ranked firm Be Free LLC, doing business as Freebie, and authorize the county manager to execute the agreement and adjust service levels going forward based on demand.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, like sign. Seeing none, carries unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to take a quick 7 to 10 minute break and let our team set up for the budget work session. So we will take a short break and be back here by 10:45. right, we are back in session. We're going to move on to our budget work session, and I'm going to turn it over to County Manager Darren Gray for his messages. Then we'll move into the property appraiser, supervisor elections, and then the general fund budget overview by Mr. Jacks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners and guests that are here. This is the first of 2 summer budget work session meetings. We are here to develop for our fiscal year 25-26 county budget. Today, we will hear presentations from our court agencies and some of our constitutional officers. We will have another work session, budget work session, on June 17th to go over the county departments and hear from our sheriff on June 17th. We are still working on finalizing our proposed budget document that I will have delivered to your offices by the end of this month, end of May. So I know some of you have heard about seminal moments. So let me explain what seminal moments is to you. I want to take a moment to talk about how we got here. Some of what we'll be discussing in depth at our next work session in June is the result of a few key turning points, what we've come to call seminal moments, and how we approach long-range planning as an organization. This wasn't something we were forced into. County leadership took this on because we believe in being responsible, transparent, and proactive. Instead of waiting for a DOGE analysis to tell us what we needed fixing, we decided to get ahead of it. We brought our departments together early, had an honest conversation, and took a hard look on how we operate. We came out of that process is more than just a new framework. It's a set of real efficiencies, changes that not only save money, but also put us on a stronger path moving forward. These seminal moments show where Seminole County is going, and they are proof that we're leading with intention and just not reacting to pressure. So you all remember last month that I took all the directors out and we had an all-day retreat. It was on April 11th. It was all day. We rolled up our sleeves. As you said, we came up that day with 42 efficiency ideas that the directors, and I want to commend all of them, that we all had a piece in this. There were both short and long-term impacts. We focused on maintaining our service levels while reducing our cost, and here just are probably one of the top 4 ones that we're going to be coming back to you on. Energy efficiency improvements with our buildings and lighting, fleet inventory, right-sizing, and management policies. And I will tell you, having Chad Wilski, the head of fleet, is the best thing I think I've ever done. Or I give credit to Christian a little bit. He brought him on with us, but he has a great story to tell, and we can't wait to come in June to explain that to you. Another one that came up was consolidation of our county-wide services, our customer services and accounting. We don't need all these offices all over the county. We can actually consolidate that, so we're working on that. And then Alan came up with a great one with this radio to cellular conversion for our public safety radios. So those are just to name a few, but we are going to highlight those in June for you so you can see the impact of them. We didn't stop there. I already have a meeting set up with an efficiency group. Actually, I got a lead from OEP, from Orlando Economic Partnership, and met through one of the networking events there. So we're meeting with them early June. And then, and I have to give Commissioner Herr, we've been talking a lot about this lately. I got a graduate student that's actually coming. We're giving them our operating budget, and they're going to be using AI tools to go through it to give us an indication of where we need to really focus on what comes out of that. So that is already set up. That's the first week of June as well, so we're excited about that. And then we're just setting the stage, so when we come in June with the department budgets as well as the sheriff, that we'll be able to go over a lot of these efficiencies and what our recommendations are to move forward. So with that, Mr. Chairman,
Great.
My opening comments. Thanks.
Very good. We will go to Mr. David Johnson, our property appraiser. Welcome, Mr. Johnson. It's always a delight to have you in our chambers. You're so
thank you very
informative,
much. It's
so
always
thank you.
delightful to be here with you guys, too, especially when we're talking about money. So here we go. Obviously, today we're here talking about our 2025-2026 budget for the Property Appraiser's Office. We, a few months ago, had the great opportunity to work with you on giving you some revenue projections and some of the things that are out there in the ecosphere that we're going to be monitoring going forward. But today, we're going to concentrate on the budget. And as all of you know, my budget and the tax collector's budget are in fact approved and monitored by the Department of Revenue on an annual basis. This is the timeline that is set out in statute 195.087 about managing our budget and the tax collector's budget. So June 1st, which is great, it's May 20th, we need to submit the budget to the Department of Revenue, and you get a simultaneous copy of that since you are the primary funding source for that. By July 15th, we get a tentative budget approval from the Department of Revenue and back to us and to you with any changes or concerns they may have. And then finally, by August the 15th, we have final budget approval to our office. So here are the assumptions that went into building the 25-26 budget. Again, this is a lot of interaction with your staff and trying to model what's going on with your organization so that we are not bifurcating one another and trying to be as cooperative and certainly serve the citizens as efficiently as possible. So here are the assumptions. Basically, we're seeing about a 4.5% increase in the budget. From a dollar perspective, that's about $346,000 in additional expenses moving forward. That assumption is based on this, a 4% salary increase, which again, those are conversations we've had with your staff and what you plan on doing for your folks. So we're trying to model that also. About an 8% increase in our insurance. Again, as you know, we are part of your insurance plan, health insurance plan. We've worked very closely with Mr. Jex about, we had a number in there, we've readjusted that because of some things that are out there, so that's assumptions also in there. And of course, the legislature will set the FRS rates. As we know, they have not come in for a landing yet on their budget. We hope they will do this sooner rather than later, but there are rates sitting out there. We use the most aggressive rates that are currently in the legislature, so we make sure that the funding's proper. And then we have maintained the full-time equivalent staffing of 48 folks for the office. One of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on, which does not necessarily have anything directly to do with the budget, but ultimately helps with revenue and moving forward. Over the last 3 years, we have taken an initiative of going through our entire homestead exemption file. There's about 105,000 homestead exemptions in the county. We get 8,000 to 9,000 new exemptions a year. Some come off, people sell their house, 8,000 or 9,000 come on, but we're constantly monitoring those exemptions because what the news is, and you've heard a lot about property tax reform, we will hear more about that ad nauseum moving forward, but the one trend line that we see through all these conversations, these hours and hours of conversation, which I've heard most of them, unfortunately we'll never get that part of my life back. The one trend line is we want to do something, the legislature, we want to do something for homestead property owners. Maybe some more stuff, but we need to make sure that our homestead property files are in great shape. We've seen this over the years because the actual homestead exemption savings in this county, from the $50,000 homestead exemption to the caps, to the portability, it's about $2,500. So in other words, citizens of this county are not paying property taxes. They're saving about $2,500 on average than they would be if there was no caps or there was no homestead. That's a huge number. When you start multiplying that times 105,000, that's billions of dollars, okay? We need to make sure that people that are entitled to those exemptions are getting those exemptions, and those that are not, are not. We have partnered with a third-party vendor over a 3-year period of time. They, again, looked at every one of the 105,000 homesteads. Less than 1% of them were flagged as coming back as something that needed additional investigation, which my staff did and went through that due process. It was in the hundreds out of 105,000 that we have actually removed homesteads on, penalized, et cetera. Most of that, you're going to say, well, what were that? Most of that is rentals, folks who in a lot of cases have adult children and who are, they're not on title, who are letting their adult children live there, and they are living in Maine or North Carolina, but the property is actually that particular person. So it was in the hundreds, not thousands. We feel very confident about that, and we certainly do continual monitoring of that to make sure that the files are in fact in great shape moving forward, and make sure, again, someone's not getting something they're not entitled to. So here are the budget allocations, that our total budget. You will get 3 letters. The chairman will get 3 letters because you have 3 funds, basically, that fund my office. You have a general fund, which of course is the majority of that. That will take a hit of about $6.9 million. The fire fund is just over $1 million, and of course your transportation fund about $29,000. The St. John's Water Management District does pay a very, very small portion of our budget, but you guys are our funders for sure, so we appreciate that. This is the request that goes up to the DOR, and in fact, that's heading out this week. I want folks to also understand, and we cover this every year also, that we have a great amount of oversight by the Department of Revenue. These are the number of schedules that have to go with the budget, much like happens with your departments, to the Department of Revenue for them to make sure that what I'm asking for makes sense and is that in comparison to my colleagues across the state. And you'll see that slide in a second, and we're very happy with all that. And again, one of the things that we do in my office is we do publish the budget on the website. And so it's out there for the taxpayers to look at. There's no secrets. And we obviously hope that they appreciate the job that we're doing and the efficiency that we're doing it. This is one of the schedules that goes up to the department. You will see what our funding was in 22, 23, I'm sorry, 23, 24, 24, 25, and then 25, 26. And you can see the progression in each of the major categories, how much those went up in each category. This is the slide we're very particularly happy about and I'm proud of, and that's that our cost per capita, as far as per citizens of this county, is about $15.61 to fund our budget on an annual basis. That puts us the 6th lowest out of the 67 counties in the state of Florida, and we're the 13th largest. So you can see the ranges from $10.11 per capita all the way up to $87 per capita. Obviously, the 87 number or smaller counties. Thank God for Dixie County and Washington and Jefferson and Madison and all those counties that have presidential names. But here's how we compare to our neighbors around us. And again, we're very competitive. Lake County, of course, is coming in at a little bit less than we are. I will tell you that will not always be that way. They have a new property appraiser, as we all know, and there's some things that probably need to be done in Lake County that maybe haven't been done over the years that will be moving forward. So again, our neighbor across the river is almost $30 per capita, so in Volusia County. So we're very proud of that number, and I appreciate my team and all the hard effort that they do every day to deliver this. This is an organizational chart. I know it's hard to read, but we do actually have an organization. We actually have people in seats, and they are actually doing jobs. So that's what that looks like. That's, again, something that has to be submitted to the Department of Revenue to make sure there are no ghost or phantom employees out there. Of course, they're not. This is another slide that I'm particularly proud of. This shows what we're measuring here is the percentage increase in the tax rolls since 2010 and our staffing level. Okay, we've actually lowered the number of staff over the years, and that's due to efficiencies, utilizing technology, and again, to deliver a higher level of service to the taxpayer and to do it more efficiently. So we talked about this slide a couple months ago about what we perceived as the growth going forward in the tax roll. And you can see from the county road and fire fund what that looks like. We talked about 6%, which was the number that we've got in there now. I will tell you by the end of this week, again, another statutory requirement, we have to notify you, all the taxing authorities, what we project to be a good faith estimate of what the tax roll will actually be. We have 6 in there right now. It's going to be north of 6, not significantly north of 6, probably about 6.5, 6.75. It's not going to be 8, it's not going to be 9, it's not going to be 10, but it's going to be in between 6 and 7%. But we will notify you officially of that before the end of the week. That, again, that's due June 1st. And you can see that number has trended down. That percentage has trended down over the last couple of years. Again, that's just a softening of the market. We have seen no declines in the market whatsoever. We have seen a flattening of the market. There are certain segments of the market, Class A office space being one of those, that we have seen some minor declines in values when we look at sales. But it's more a function of the market flattening out. No significant declines at this point. And with that, I am available for whatever questions you may have.
Any questions from the board? Commissioner Herr, we'll start on her end and we'll go this way.
First of all, David, thank you for being here, and we're sorry you lost all that time in your life to listening in. So I just want to point out one mistake on your slides, if you'll go to page 11.
Okay. This is where we had the assumptions, and which one are you looking? Okay, yeah. That one?
Your arrow is not indicative of your ask. And so I think this was the case last year, and I kept my mouth quiet, but we're coming in at 6.
Right.
You're coming in at 4.5.
Right.
You've done that every year since I've been here. Give yourself credit. Don't put in writing that your costs are going like this. We have others that are. Yours are not. Take
Well, I
credit for
appreciate
it.
that.
They're pretty flat.
Thank you very much. I was going to say,
So-
I'm measuring the increase in the budget.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you.
We
for that.
appreciate you, David.
Thank you very much.
And your team.
Nothing here. Commissioner DeLaurie?
Thank you. Thank you, David. As always, it's very informative, well done. You do a great job. You talked about some of the Class A office buildings and about them trying to get back to pre-COVID occupancy and numbers. What have you seen around the state, and has anyone doing anything around the state to assist them to get to that level?
So we're hearing the same thing across the state. The only carve-out probably is South Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, because there's a certain dynamic going on between Central and South America that we don't see. And of course, that's kind of an epicenter. And a lot of the financial world has moved or has offices in South Florida now from New York. So we don't have that dynamic, but we are all struggling across the state, the Tampas, us, of the world, with this vacancy that's in Class A office space. As you know, the problem is it's very hard to get any kind of financing. So even if I'm an investor and I want to buy Class A office space, unless I've got private equity or I can self-finance, it's a tough sell because of what's going on nationally. The good news for us in Seminole County, and actually across the state, is no new construction has occurred over the last number of years. So what that means is the supply has stayed steady. Demand is a little bit down, but I think overall, this is still a growing area. Again, as I've told you before, I'd much rather be the property appraiser of Seminole County, Florida, than Toledo, Ohio, okay? So that's problematic if you're in some of those Rust Belt cities there. So I think we will see the stuff backfill over the years, but it's going to take a minute. And the problem is, like I said, investors are kind of locked out from buying it because of the interest rates and some of the risk that's out there. So,
Well, David, for the record, I am, I'm sure my other commissioners would agree, we appreciate you being a property appraiser here and not Toledo, Ohio.
well, thank you, I appreciate
But,
that.
so you're saying that they are coming back very gradually, just that...
Very gradually, very, very gradually. And again, what we're seeing is as space, so the good news, the reason we've not seen as big of a decline in your Class A office space, especially along the International Parkway corridor, is because of those were, a lot of those were leases with Class A companies, okay? And they may be 5 or 10-year leases. Whether you've got anybody in there or not, you still have to pay the lease payment on a monthly basis. So as those leases come up, which is what we're starting to see now, past COVID, that I don't need 75,000 square feet anymore, I need 45,000 square feet. They're not abandoned it completely, but they are downsizing the amount they need. And that's got to get backfilled by somebody moving forward.
With them coming back, as you stated, what's the projection? How many years out do you think it would be?
I would say another 5 years at least. And again, if we could get the equity markets loosened up, in other words, if interest rates decline and more money is floating around out there, I think you will see savvy investors come in and start buying up some of these facilities, probably doing some renovations, reconfiguring them. We see this with shopping centers all the time, where we'll take down a big box and redo it. But it's a matter of needing capital to do that. And of course, these buildings are, $200 or $300 a square foot, and 100,000 square foot building, that's $30, $40, $50 million. So it's real money at some point. Yeah.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Just a good job, David. Thank you for keeping your budget in check every single year. I
Very
appreciate
good.
it.
Well, I thank you for the partnership, and again, I've got a really good team, and we try to deliver as much efficiency as we can. So thank you for your partnership also and your support.
Commissioner Lockhart?
Yeah. I echo all of the sentiments of gratitude, not just for what you do in your own organization and keeping your budget streamlined and the efficiencies, but the resource that you are to us as we navigate our overall budget is just so grateful, because there's a trust factor there that we have with you that is just so incredibly critical for the work that we do. So thank you. I will ask you two things, and I'm asking it of every office that comes before us with their budgets, and so this is not special for you. Although you are special, this is not special for you. I'm going to ask for your lapsed salary dollars.
Okay.
And not just this last year, but maybe give us a look back for the
Okay.
last few years
Okay.
of what your lapsed salary dollars average. And then your line item budget to actual
Okay.
for this current year and your prior 2 years. So we can see for everyone what you've budgeted for the current and prior 2 years, and your actual at the line item level.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Thank
Very
you.
good. All right, very good. Thank you.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much, Dave, for being here, and also thank you, by the way, for what you do for some of the charities in our community. It doesn't go without notice, and I think that speaks volumes when our electeds give back to the community through the charitable work that you guys have done. So thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you.
We sincerely
Thank you for your
appreciate
support,
it.
too. We appreciate you very much, too.
You bet. Thanks
Thank you
again.
very much. Have a great day.
Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Next up, we will have Supervisor of Elections, Ms. Amy Pinnock.
Good morning. Thank
Good
you,
morning.
everyone, for having me here this morning. I feel my chair is really low, so I'm... First, just wanted to take the opportunity to thank each of you for taking the time to meet with my team and I for our one-on-ones. It really helped get us prepared, fine-tune our budget presentation, and make sure that we were delivering what you needed to make your decisions when it come time to reviewing and approving our budget. I do want to acknowledge I have a couple of staff with me. My Assistant Supervisor, Jason Tiemann, and my Director of Operations, Kimberly Walker, have been a really integral part in helping prepared for this budget. And so I do want to, as a precursor, provide you, I gave your Commissioner Lockhart some updated reports. I would like to take a few minutes and present to you my internal transition audit report that will help me give you some insight as to where the office was when we came into it, some of the decisions that we've had to make that have impacted this year's financials, and how it's going to impact the budget that has been presented to you. As a result of some of this and some additional conversations with your county manager, There was an additional change to the budget. So I've given you an updated budget document that decreased by about $198,000. So there's a revised kind of summary review and then the detailed financial report. So please stop me if you have any questions, but what I'm going to do is just give you a very, very high level. Some of I think the important pieces that impacted me kind of as a forensic accountant, some of the things that surprised me coming into this office. This is my internal review process. This is not the financial audit that you guys helped approve that is going on with our partners with Forvis Mazars. That is still ongoing. We've just dove into the accounting or the payroll side of the accounting processes. And so I'm hoping in the next 30 to 45 days that will be released. We will present that to your office as well.
Ms. Pinnock, if you could move that microphone a little closer to you.
Sure.
I see people struggling to hear, maybe.
Sure. Is that better?
That's better, thank you.
Okay. One of the things I do want to put on the record is it's important to note that I had zero transition prior to me coming into this office January 7th. I came in, I was sworn in, and that was my actual first day of having any interaction with staff, any documentation, any records, was not handed off anything, was not introduced to the process. So I walked in day one with fresh eyes, looking at everything and digging right in. Some of the, again, high-level things that we discovered as going through the office is we were not in records retention compliance. We had missing or no employee HR files. We had missing contracts. We had missing emails. Since then, we have put some things in process in place, including software to make sure that we are in compliance with record keeping. From a legal perspective, we can't verify that E-Verify. We cannot validate that E-Verify was done on all poll workers. Every election year, we hire between 700 and 800 poll workers. And federal government requires, federal regulation requires that you do E-Verify on every new employee. We can't validate that that was done. We had many, many vendor and payroll issues discovered. High level, again, we actually had to do 92 W-2 corrections on poll workers because of inaccurate processing. We also had many late vendor payments. Fortunately, very few crossed the financial time frame of one fiscal year to another, but just enough. And it has resulted in us having to take extra time in rebuilding vendor relationships because they lost the trust in our office ability to process timely payments. There was just overall neglect in the office administration, including lack of organization, incomplete or no filing systems. I think one of the biggest surprises, there was no follow-up on a voter request for an administrative hearing. The office received a request in August to provide a hearing to a felon who wanted to get his voting rights restored, and there was no office response to this gentleman. Therefore, he didn't get to go through the process, nor did he get to partake in the ability or not to vote in the primary or the general election of this past year.
Ms. Pinnock, was that a veteran?
A felon.
A felon, okay.
By law, we're required to have administrative hearings
Right.
for felons who want to regain their voting rights. This person requested this hearing in early August, and there was no response from the office.
And wasn't that an initiative the previous SOE had undertaken?
That's a state law.
No, understood, but I believe my understanding was the previous SOE was out making rounds advocating for such hearings to occur to renew those voting rights. And you're telling me a request was made and never granted?
Correct. I'm not aware of what he was out advocating for or against, but yes, he did not provide, or the office did not provide a response or provide access to this administrative hearing in a timely manner. By law, we have 30 days to respond and to schedule that hearing. and then 45 days thereafter to provide the response to the voter on their ability to or not gain their rights back, and that process did not happen.
Has your office since picked that up to
Yes, it's been
accommodate?
resolved.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
We found misuse of SOE email accounts. We had numerous issues with incorrect establishment of candidate financial records, a couple of which have resulted in fines having to be levied to candidates because, or PACs, because they were not, I can't even provide an assumption as to why. It just didn't happen. The final, just high level is, as we are here talking about budget, and you guys went through an extensive review of the budget for the 24-25 year, this office has incurred over $161,000 in legal fees that did not have a budget line in the 24-25 year. So that is going to be an anticipated budget transfer that we will be coming to you in the near future to make sure that we have allocated, we are reallocating other resources that were budgeted to cover legal fees that have been incurred in this office. You have a 4-page report in front of you. I'm happy to answer any questions. You've seen the report, but I provided it again today. Happy to answer any questions before we go into the budget.
Any questions from any of the board members on the document before mentioned? Okay, please proceed, Ms. Bennett.
Thank you. Okay, coming into the office, Mr. Jenks, thank you so much for providing all the backup documentation for how we got to this year's budget that we're currently in. I provided you a projection for 24-25, which is going to land us about $4.62 million on a budget of $4.628 million. Some of the major projects that we've had to do coming into the office, it didn't have to, but did and have to do, is we purchased a program called Clear Ballot. This will allow us to increase our audit of every election from the required 1 precinct, 1 race to 100% of all ballots, all races, every election. Due to Apple discontinuing their service of a certain level on iPads, we had to do 100% refresh on all our iPads, which are used for voter check-in. That was about $120,000. Again, we purchased software to make sure that we are in records retention compliance. We've spent a lot of time working on small and large office upgrades to really rebuild the culture in the office, provide a very safe, clean, positive workspace with adequate working space for our employees. We are heading into the required list maintenance right now. Within the next 30 days, each and every registered voter in Seminole County will be getting a letter from our office to validate their voter registration information, every piece of it. This will affect 2 ways. One, to remind them, should they like to vote by mail, to renew their vote by mail, since that expires every year after the general election. It will also it will validate if they are currently in Seminole County, a registered voter at the correct address, in the correct party. If we do not get a response to them, that is considered a legal document that we can remove them from the voter rolls. So you will see some numbers change probably significantly over the next 6 months as we go through this process. We will definitely keep you posted. We've also had to do some election equipment refresh. And as you see in your capital budget that we presented in front of you, we have some additional election equipment refresh. One of the things that did not happen at the end of last year was all requests for purchases of capital and other significant purchases within the office were declined. And had that been reviewed and approved, One of our vendors who provides the tabulation machines, the DS200s, discontinued the making of the DS200s at the end of last year. When the request was made in August, the request was for 7 new machines. The DS200s are no longer being made, and now we have to purchase 15 machines to make sure we have adequate coverage to use those at all of our early voting sites. So that's an additional cost. Each machine is $7,000. Part of the challenges as we came into the office. I love that David provided his cost by population. Our auditors actually created this spreadsheet, and I know some of you laughed in our individual meetings. We are actually comparing our costs to registered voters, and we compared it to our regional counties. Seminole County has the highest percentage of registered voters to population of Seminole County, which is great. However, when you go over and look at expenditures by registered voter, we are the lowest spend in our region. And while 2 previous SOEs like to brag about his cost savings areas, I think that this speaks to the fact that maybe we don't necessarily provide voter services, the great services that Seminole County has the best standard for, just in every service that's provided. So if you look at the very bottom line, in our budget request, we are actually trying to increase. It's a little bit, it's not much, but we are working on not being at the bottom. I don't think in this case bottom is good. I think in other cases it is. But when we have been short-staffed, when we have the lack of equipment, it doesn't allow for a great voter service experience. So some of the 2025-26 impacts, we anticipate expenses related to 1.75 elections due to the timing of the budget cycle versus election dates. We have 2 elections next year, the primary and the general. The general happens in November. Budget cycle starts in October. We will have vote by mails out in the next budget cycle, but the general election will happen in the 26-27 budget cycle, so that's why it's 1.75. In the 2024 election, I just want to make this point. Again, it will reiterate that we're not necessarily providing the great services. Seminole County underperformed state turnout in more than 24 years at 73% voter turnout compared to state turnout of 78%. To me, that's given us insight that we need to get more boots on the ground, more marketing, more information out to the public to encourage them to vote, to make sure that they're aware of when to vote and how to vote, and getting them access. Salary, wages, and benefits, we have a net increase of 1.5 FTE. We'll be about 24.5 FTEs. We have really retooled and reallocated a lot of the leadership positions that were in the office prior and created more voter services clerks. So you will see more people that are sitting at the front really working to make sure all of the voters are getting the information that they need on a timely basis, doing everything additionally that we are required to do. I'm not sure that you have followed, but the governor signed into law a new petition process, a constitutional amendment process that is going to affect our office, and some of the information that we have to get back and forth to the state is going to create a little bit more work. And so we're absorbing all of that into this year's budget as well. We are additionally bringing accounting and payroll into house, so you will see a small additional expense in both of those areas to bring in a software. Not comfortable with staying on J.D. Edwards. I think that program is too robust and costly for us, so we are looking to move towards QuickBooks and a payroll company similar to what the property appraiser uses, which is compliant with FRS and everything else that the state uses. We additionally, the department, one of the programs that the Department of Homeland Security used to absorb costs for us was some cybersecurity training, investigation, and safety measures. And through the DOGE program, that program was eliminated. So we are having to absorb some of those costs and bring those in-house. One of the things that the county manager and I, Mr. Jenks and I have talked as well is there have been costs, I think, that the county has absorbed that haven't been reflected on our budget or on our financials. And this budget reflects every penny of those costs to show what the actual cost of our office is. Those interdepartment or interagency transfers will happen if we use your print shop, if we use the postage, and any other, if we have to use attorney fees, those will all be allocated over. But this budget reflects every single penny of those costs. And then one of the big things that we've had to do this year and into next year is really replenish and replace all of the exhausted supplies from inventory from the previous SOE's office. We are working in the future to create a capital refresh five-year plan, a capital five-year plan, so that you can not be surprised as we walk in or give you a budget. You'll get a budget every year of, we have 140 DS200s that we are going to have to start replenishing, because even though they stopped making them last year, doesn't mean they're not going to service them. However, at one point they will stop servicing and we will have to replace those. Our DS950s that are the big tabulators for our vote by mail, we currently have 4. We're in the process of procuring 1 or 2 over the next 2 years, because in the last election, 2 of them went down during the election. A very uneasy feeling when something like that happens in mid-election, and that's something that we need to avoid at all costs. So the next slide is our budget trend, Commissioner Herr, I hope this answers your question of leveling and understanding why the budget swings. One of the questions that she asked was, we're going to have to retrain you on the budget for the SOE's office. I think as much as I'm having to retrain myself on this, learn this budget has been a big challenge. The swing from one year to the next primarily is because elections, and we do have to hire between 700 and 800 people during those election times. And that's really the big swing of what you see up here. Our budget is coming in under the presidential election for 2 years. Last year, we tend to compare election year to election year, so you will see we are coming in less because we do have 1 less election in this next year. We don't have the presidential preference primary. And so you see our salary, wage, and benefits costs coming in just a little bit lower, as well as our total budget coming in lower. Our request for this budget this next year is $5.2 million, $5.295. It's an increase of, and I'm sorry that this number landed this way, it just is what it is, so I will say the whole number, $666,401 is 12.59%. However, when you look at the detail of that 12.59% really isn't, it's skewed by the increase in capital that we need to purchase the elections equipment. The operational increase is 8.35%, or $429,000. And so that is our budget presentation.
Great. Any questions from the board? Comments, questions? We'll start with Commissioner Lockhart and work our way this direction.
Thank you for your diligence and true transparency as you go through this process, and as you learn more, your willingness to share not just with us but with the public, so that we can get level set, I think is really important. Reaffirming and reestablishing trust with the community and their election process is just so critical, so thank you for your commitment to that. Mm-hmm. I had a couple questions earlier for Mr. Johnson. I don't know if you heard them, but I'll repeat them just for the sake of the record, so that I'm looking for our average of lapsed salary dollars for the last few years, and a line item budget to actual for this current year and the prior 2 years. And I know that's going to be really hard because frankly, I'm not sure there were line item budgets in prior years. So I'm putting an asterisk next to that because I don't know what you're going to find. But
Sure. If, in the budget books that I gave you on the one-on-ones, we provided 2 different documents. That was a budget trend, which was the actual budget that came from the budget that was input into J.D. Edwards. So I know that that was the actual approved budget. And then there was a second document that were the actual numbers, minus any interagency transfers, so those don't reflect some of the print shop uses. I will go through and make sure that it's updated, and those were for the last 10 years. So I will go through and update this current year projection on there so that you can see, and then I'll create a variance report on that and get that to you in the next week. Not this week. It's my daughter's graduation week, so I'm I'm off celebrating. So I'll get those to you early next week.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Constantine, anything?
Supervisors, this is not a question for you, it's a question for Tim. Prior to some of the members on this board, and not the last supervisor, but the previous one, and by the way, Supervisor, I'm very happy that you didn't say, and we are the lowest per voter, and, you know, we've heard that so many times. So, Tim, there was a mid-year request by Mr. Ertel for voting machines. And I believe that was for $800,000 with the suggestion that we would never have to buy voting machines for a long, long time.
It's now a long, long time.
3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years.
Count COVID, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, what happened to that? Do you have any idea?
I can answer that question.
You can answer, good.
Absolutely. They're electronic voting machines. They're electronic tabulators, not voting machines. They take the votes off of the paper and they tabulate the numbers, but they are electronic. And electronics usually have a lifespan of, when you're looking at a computer, 4 years to 7 years. Or if you're looking at something more robust, it's 7 to 10 years. And we are in that 7 to 10 year cycle right now. So some of the equipment is starting to show its wear and tear. Some of the equipment, the vendors are saying, I think that you need to replace them because we could get into a technical challenge in an election, and that's certainly not something that any of us want to see happen. And so it's purely from the lifespan cycle of, I'm not sure how that promise was ever made because it's electronic.
Thank you. I don't like the answer, but thank you for giving me the answer.
Commissioner Delory.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Pennock, well done. I really appreciate our one-on-one briefing that you gave me in my office. Very well done and very transparent. And I do realize that, you know, we've been told, whatever time it was, that we wouldn't have to replace the voting machines for a long, long time, and now it's that long, long time, as you've clearly stated. And the fact that you're up to speed on all these little issues proves the fact that not only you're the right person for the job, but you're into the details. Well done. Thank you.
My comments are, not to reiterate what's already been said, but in our briefing in my office, I'm delighted that you're willing to continue the transparency of allowing Seminole Government TV to come in and observe what's going on in the building, as well as what the canvassing board's work is being done and what's taking place. And I think that's going to go a long way in allowing the public to see what really goes on behind the scenes and transparency. And I'm glad you've done this, and I think it was a very wise business decision to do a drill down on this office before you took the reins permanently, financially, to understand what had previously been done or not done, because I have a belief, had you not done that, you would own the whole thing. So I sincerely appreciate that you were wise enough from a business perspective to drill down through that and understand what you were walking into and so forth. And I suspect, based on that business decision, that you will continue to do the people's work for the most efficient way possibly. So I thank you for that very much. Sure.
If I could add one more
Yes.
piece to that, I am going to make you work a little harder on the canvassing board. We are actually going to add a component of the canvassing board doing a piece of the signature verification live so that the voters can see that it is done. It will be televised. We'll have to figure out how to not show the signatures, but
Sure.
we will be engaging the canvassing board in doing live voter signature verification, a sampling of all of the vote by mail pieces that come in while you're sitting in the canvassing board.
I'll trade you that for the equipment to duplicate the ballots. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Commissioner Herr.
So a few comments. First, I'll start out by saying I love the truth in spending approach to this, that if it's your expense, you're moving it off of the county's roster and onto yours. So what we call that truth in ledger. And so that's in here. That's part of it. That is a big deal from my perspective. I would love to see, I think the representation of the spend per voter is important. You shared, but I would like to see it after the rolls are cleaned.
Absolutely.
I just, given the pages of document that you just gave me, I'm thinking that may change considerably. I could be wrong. And then the last thing I do just want to get on the record, given all that you've shared for our citizens, is the fact that the supervisor of elections is a constitutional officer, and this board has no governance over constitutional officers, but I will give our current chairman and our past chairman full credit for doing every single thing they could possibly do, including our county attorney staff and our county manager, to make sure that you weren't in this situation. It could have been worse. So I thank them for doing everything that they did, and I appreciate you for being here. The voters got it right.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else? Commissioner Lockhart.
So Wikipedia says that Mike Ertel was the supervisor of elections in Seminole County from February 2005 to January 2019. So time flies when you're having fun.
Nice.
6 years.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Pennock,
Thank
very
you.
much. We're also going to shift gears because we're getting late in our proceedings today. We're going to hold Mr. Jex for this afternoon. But at this time, the regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners will go into recess, and the board will convene a closed attorney-client session requested by the county attorney. The purpose of the closed session is to discuss strategy related to litigation expenditures in the pending River Cross Land Company, LLC versus Seminole County case. The closed session will be conducted in room 3024 of the County Services Building and is estimated to last approximately 1 hour. Attendance at the closed session is strictly limited to County Commissioners Bob Delary, Jay Zembauer, Lee Constantine, Amy Lockhart, Andrea Herr, County Manager Mr. Darren Gray, County Attorney Kate Latour, Assistant County Attorney Cassidy Perdue, and outside legal counsel Todd Norman of the Nelson Mullins Law Firm. The closed session is being conducted pursuant to Section 286.0118 Florida statutes. All discussions will be held strictly limited to the strategy related to litigation expenditures. At the conclusion of the closed session, the meeting shall be relocated back to the BCC chambers and reopened with the following announcement to be made when we return. We shall be in recess. Thank you all very much. approximately 12:30, and we are back in session at the Board of County Commission meeting. The closed attorney-client session has concluded. The board will now be in recess until 1 p.m.
Who made it 1 PM instead of 1:30?